Well, here we are, just days away from the long-awaited Resident Evil 2 remake, ready to reintroduce us to two of the most prolific characters in the franchise. With these new interpretations on the way, let's take a look back at the life and times of Leon Scott Kennedy and Claire Redfield, starting from their first venture into the world of survival horror back in the original Resident Evil 2. First though, let's remember where these characters come from. Now, in the first Resident Evil game, the player takes on the role of one of two members of Raccoon City's STARS unit, a team of highly trained and specialized officers investigating bizarre murders in a house full of biological weapons. For the sequel though, Capcom decided to not only raise the stakes, but to handicap the expectations of the characters. Instead of using the same characters again, who had already faced the horrors of the Umbrella Corporation's creations, Capcom created two new protagonists who were even less prepared for the crisis awaiting them. We're first introduced to this dynamic duo on the evening of September 29th, 1998, as they individually make their way into Raccoon City. Leon is a rookie cop, 22 years old, fresh out of the academy, and exceptionally late for his first day of work. He drives into the city in full uniform and, though not technically on duty yet, decides to investigate a strange disturbance on his way to the office. Claire, meanwhile, is the younger sister of Chris Redfield, one of the main protagonists of the first Resident Evil game. After the events of the first game, Chris went off the grid, apparently not considering the level of concern this would rise out of his sister, who skips out of school for an impromptu motorcycle ride into town. Then, zombies happen, and for once it's a good thing that the cop just starts shooting people before figuring out what's going on. Fortunately for Claire, Leon's got a pretty good eye for who is and isn't an imminent threat. After a brief introduction, Leon and Claire head for the Raccoon City police station but are separated en route. They reunite a few times over the course of the evening, loosely coordinating their escape efforts while trying to corral the other survivors they encounter along the way. Specifically, Sherry Birkin and Ada Wong. Ada, briefly mentioned in the first Resident Evil game as the girlfriend of one of Umbrella's researchers, is actually a spy working for a rival bioweapons developer on a mission to retrieve a sample of Umbrella's G-Virus. She encounters Leon a couple times and reluctantly accepts his help, while his boyish charms and willingness to take a bullet for her slowly melts her frozen heart. Meanwhile, Claire becomes the surrogate caretaker of Sherry, the neglected daughter of William and Annette Birkin. Sherry's father is the developer of the G-Virus that everybody is fighting over, and said fight is the ultimate reason that the zombie-making T-Virus got released into the city in the first place. So while Leon chases Ada and Claire babysits Sherry, the four of them eventually find their way to Umbrella's secret laboratory. With the help of Sherry's dying mother, Claire whips up a vaccine to clear up Sherry's G-Virus infection. Meanwhile, Ada seemingly dies, but don't worry, she gets better. Leon and Claire take the last train out of town, officially making Sherry an orphan in the process when they blow up William Birkin, who is at this point little more than a raging tentacle monster. Finally reaching relative safety, these two crazy kids can now settle down, raise Sherry, and live happily ever after. Well, not quite. It turns out that the US government wasn't too keen on the idea of there being unaccounted for witnesses to the Raccoon City incident, especially since the government was funding some of the T-Virus research in the first place. This puts Claire and Leon in quite a predicament. Making sure that Sherry gets the care that she needs while also providing Claire with some cover so she can continue her search for her brother, Leon turns himself over to the government while Claire runs off into the woods. Which brings us to December of 1998. Following her brother's trail to Europe, Claire decides to break into Umbrella's European headquarters to see if they're having any luck tracking him down. Pretty impressive for a 19-year-old college dropout, but she still ends up in the slammer. Specifically, a private island prison owned by Umbrella. Fortunately for Claire, she doesn't spend too long behind bars because before she can even be processed, another rival bioweapons company attacks the island. Unfortunately for Claire, the attack releases a newer, apparently faster-acting strain of the T-Virus, leaving Claire trapped on an island with what must literally be her worst nightmares. And even worse than that, she's got to deal with this jackass. Steve Burnside, a teenage boy sent to the island prison for being too obnoxious to remain in Canada. On the plus side, even in the middle of a paramilitary attack and zombie outbreak, the secret island prison still has decent internet. And remember, this is in 1998. Anyway, it seems that Umbrella has been tracking Chris, so after 3 months of searching for her brother, now Claire has to get him to come rescue her. Claire forwards Chris's location to Leon and gets back to the business of staying alive. Meanwhile, that must have been an awkward conversation for Leon. "Hey, you don't know me, and I know you're in hiding, but your sister's in prison and probably in mortal peril, so here's the address, good luck." Claire and Steve do manage to escape the island on their own, but really they just trade one prison for another and end up getting stuck in Antarctica instead. They almost escape again, but Steve's infinite dumbassery results in the awakening of Alexia Ashford, another Umbrella mad scientist who also injected herself with her own virus, in this case the T. Veronica virus. Things go poorly for Claire after that, and even more poorly for Steve, who ends up getting turned into a hulking green monster. However, Alexia underestimated the power of Claire's tight jeans and Steve's unyielding teenage thirst. He manages to break free of her control just long enough to transform back into a Canadian and die. Meanwhile, Chris and Claire finally reunite, they finish off Alexia and escape Antarctica in a fighter jet, vowing to finish Umbrella off once and for all. And they do! Off-screen. Yep, it turns out that getting a small city blown up because your bioweapon got loose is bad for business, so Umbrella's stocks tanked and that was that. So what happens now? Well, Claire apparently spends some time reconnecting with her brother in Europe, but Leon has taken a different path. Seems that in exchange for not being thrown into a deep dark hole, Leon agreed to become a super-duper secret agent man, conducting investigations into biological weapons for the US government. Specifically, he's recruited by government agent Adam Bedford, and that'll be important in a little bit. As for Leon himself, what happened to him immediately after Raccoon City is a little murky. Technically, Resident Evil Gaiden isn't a canon game, but it does feature the next playable appearance of Leon, who is now part of an anti-Umbrella task force. This particular mission leads him to the first of many doomed ships in the Resident Evil universe, and that's when Leon goes missing. Never fear though, former STARS member Barry Burton, a survivor of the first Resident Evil game, is on the case. The rest is a bit complicated, involving a little girl and a shape-shifting parasite, but by the end of the game it's implied that the original Leon has been body-swapped with a shape-shifting bioweapon. Again, not technically canon, but it would explain a lot of things about changes to Leon's character in subsequent games, particularly his superhuman durability and completely non-human sense of humor. One way or the other, in 2002, the entity that identifies itself as Leon S. Kennedy was sent to South America, where he teamed up with professional badass Jack Krauser for Operation Javier. Turns out that a Latin American drug lord had been dealing with Umbrella, including getting his hands on the T. Veronica virus, which he'd been using on his daughter to keep her alive. Leon and Krauser wreck the place and kill all the monsters, but not before Krauser takes a figurative arrow to the knee, which in this case is a literal bone spike to the arm. In either case, Krauser's adventuring days are over. Or are they? Flash forward another 2 years to 2004, Leon's apparently off the bioweapons detail and has been assigned to protect Ashley Graham, the president's daughter. Though they probably should have expedited his paperwork because Ashley gets kidnapped before he can start. Leon tracks her to an isolated Spanish village, and it looks like his bioweapon killing days aren't over yet. It turns out the whole village has been infected with mind-controlling parasites, so that's kind of a problem. While Leon is rescuing the first daughter, there's more going on behind the scenes. Ada Wong is alive and well, still sneaking around trying to steal bioweapon samples. And Krauser is alive too, with a shiny new mutant arm, though his comeback is just as short-lived as, well, him, once he picks a fight with Leon, who is still totally 100% human, right? The rest is all midgets, religion, and commentary on US foreign policy. None of it matters, and in the end, Leon manages to save the girl, kill the monsters, and escape. Now it's time to check in on Claire. Since last we saw her, Claire's joined up with the human rights organization TerraSave, and with bioweapon outbreaks spreading across the world, she's been keeping exceptionally busy. In 2005, Claire was waiting at Harvardville Airport when she unfortunately happened to find herself in the middle of a bioweapon sales pitch. Will Pharma, a rival to Umbrella with apparently the same business model, sparked an outbreak at the airport to demonstrate to potential buyers what the latest version of their T-virus could do, and thus Claire is stuck in the middle of another disaster. Fortunately, the president sent their top man to save the day. Reunited, Leon and Claire rescue the survivors, expose Will Pharma's plot, and once again wipe out a G-type monster for good measure. Also, Leon pulls off stunts that would put Captain America to shame, but, you know, he's still just a normal human and not a bioweapon shapeshifter. But even though Will Pharma is out of commission, the bioweapon black market continues to grow strong. It seems that every time one pharmaceutical company goes down, there's another one to pick up the pieces. This also marks the last time that Leon and Claire will share an adventure together, though neither one of them appears in the next 6 years, so who knows what happens during that time. Leon returns to the spotlight in 2011 when rumors of bioweapons being utilized by resistant fighters in a war-torn Eastern European country attract his attention. Turns out that both sides have been utilizing illegal bioweapons in their battle, which is a big international no-no but makes for a killer action sequence. Also, don't even try to tell me that Leon isn't rocking some sort of unnatural abilities at this point. Even if he really is the original Leon, then at the very least some of the crap that he's been exposed to over the years has clearly had some beneficial effects. Anyway, it's not just Leon reliving his greatest nightmares. Remember that time Claire was attacked by a helicopter, taken to an island prison, and forced to match wits against a mad scientist that injected herself with a custom virus while trying to attain the powers of a god, all while babysitting a bratty teenager? Well, in 2011, Claire is still working for TerraSave when she's attacked by a helicopter, taken to an island prison, and forced to match wits against a mad scientist that injected herself with a custom virus while trying to attain the powers of a god, all while babysitting a bratty teenager. Although this time, the bratty teenager is Barry's daughter, who may or may not make it off of the island alive, depending on your choices. In either case, it's a good thing that Claire's done all of this before, because the virus that Claire gets injected with is triggered by an excessive amount of fear, and at this point in her life, this sort of thing mostly just pisses her off. Even more so when Claire finds out that it was her not-so-secret boyfriend that set her and her co-workers up to be guinea pigs. Naturally, Claire kills everything in her path and eventually makes it off the island. This brings us to 2013, where Leon just cannot catch a break. In the city of Tall Oaks, President Adam Benford, yes, that one, is scheduled to come clean about the government's involvement in the Raccoon City incident. Somebody's not too thrilled about that idea though, and arranges to have the T-virus leaked into the city, ultimately resulting in Leon having to shoot his boss, which, again, is the President of the United States. Framed for the outbreak and for killing the president, Leon teams up with Secret Service agent Helena Harper, escapes the outbreak, and is forced to go underground to solve the mystery of who wiped out an entire city to keep the president from spilling the beans. Spoiler alert, it was the obviously evil National Security Advisor Derek Simmons, who is also part of a secret society and Neo Umbrella, and I don't know, who cares. Their adventure takes them from the United States to China, and of course there are monsters there too. A lot of them, just monsters for days. Also, Simmons turns into, among other things, a mutant dinosaur because at this point, why not? It doesn't matter. Leon and Helena eventually defeat Simmons and clear their names, so all's well that ends well. As we go into 2014, we get the last known adventure of Claire Redfield, this time in manga form. Still an agent with TerraSave, Claire gets tangled up in yet another bioweapon outbreak, this time hitting a secluded island hosting a reality show full of bikini models, because this entire manga is mostly just an excuse to show pretty girls in swimsuits either running from zombies, being killed by zombies, or being zombies. Claire spends the first half of the story behind the scenes investigating Blinky the fish here while all the girls are getting eaten. Eventually though, she brings in the cavalry to save the day, but of course it's not nearly that simple. With most of the cavalry dead, Claire rallies the survivors, discovers the secrets of an abandoned Umbrella lab on the island, kills one of the giant monsters hunting them, and gets, well, one of the survivors off the island safely. Mission mostly successful. And that brings us to Leon's most recent adventure, when yet another insane bioweapon researcher / arms dealer decides to launch an attack on New York City. It's up to Chris Redfield to save the day, but he needs Leon's help to do it. Leon, unfortunately, is in a bit of a low spot after a mission gone bad and is drinking away his problems, and if that sounds familiar, then you must have played Resident Evil 6. Anyway, Chris talks Leon out of his funk, they team up, kill the monsters, save the day, and yeah, no, Leon is very clearly not human. Nobody gets up after that, but whatever. And that is probably the complete story of Claire and Leon's lives. It seems that they've both found their definitive purpose, with each of them generally sticking with the same job they've had since their early 20s. Though if we ever do see these two again in a contemporary setting, they'll be in their 40s, which is kind of ridiculous to think about. Resident Evil 7 looked like it was starting a new era that could finally put the spotlight back on new characters that haven't spent their entire adult lives fighting unnatural horrors. Maybe this means we'll continue to see the veterans regulated to supporting characters with DLC stories. Meanwhile, the upcoming Resident Evil 2 remake could very well serve as a reboot for the series, giving Capcom the opportunity to keep these characters fresh, using them to tell new stories set in the early 2000s. Or maybe Leon will still be doing backflips and knife fights in his 40s, because why not? He's not human anyway. So, where do you think the story of Leon and Claire will go from here? Give me your best predictions in the comments. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this and have a nice day.